I wouldn't wax this to the nose because there's no way I'm putting a foot up here. Now, I said earlier that I'm not waxing it to the nose and I don't think I'm going to be putting a foot down there. Well, guess what? It actually loves it. All right, I've just picked up a long fish, a quad fish, 1, 2, 3, 4 fin slots from Scotty James, SJS Custom. So I'm just going to measure it up and just have a look over it and see what we've got. So first up, I'm going to check the bottom shape. I've got a straight rule here and I can see that it's got a little bit of, it's actually a double concave from the nose here, very early on. Underneath the front foot, double concave, back foot, still double concave, through to the fins, with a bit of V out the tail, quite an accentuated V. So this is actually a full length double concave. It's pretty unusual actually. Interestingly, the stringer is still sitting below the rail. It's almost a double concave within a very mild single. What that means is this is going to accelerate very quickly. It's going to have a lot of acceleration. It'll actually be easier to paddle because it's got that concave way up the front. Double concave. And it will also pivot from rail to rail, which is what you want with a longer board to be able to turn it. That's the first thing. Next, we've got the calipers here, and this board is supposed to be 7.6 by 20 5/8, 2 3/4. So I'm looking for that 2 3/4 number. So I squeeze the calipers on the stringer line. It seems to be thickest right here, which is about the middle of the board. And now we see how much that is. And it is exactly 2 3/4. So far, so good. Now it's supposedly 20 5/8. So what we look for is the widest point on the board. I'm putting this black line along the stringer, and looks like it's widest around about here. We expect it just a little bit forward, and it's 20 5/8. So tick, tick. Now I'm always curious to know how wide it is at the nose and the tail. So I'll hold this at the front and I'm going to call this 13. It's not quite 13.5, but it's more than 13.25. So it is something like, we could call it 13 3/8. Now I'll just wet my finger there to get the next line. 13 3/8. So it's actually quite narrow, by the way. And 18.25. So I'll write that down. That makes this a pretty refined thing. It's not like a chunky mid fish. This is a refined 7.6 because it's fairly narrow. It's less than 21 inches. This is more of a step up. Go to the tail, same deal. I'm going to call that 15 1/8 and 16 5/8. That's actually pretty pulled in on the tail and the nose. Makes this a refined board. Let's just talk through the shape. I'm going to hold this up to the camera. You can see the tail is pretty thin, pretty foiled, right? Skinny at the tail, thin, and the nose, again, pretty thin. It has a slightly beveled beak, which is nice. But look at those rails, they're beveled. They're actually much skinnier than what you would expect. So unique to this board, if we have a look at the deck, you'll see back here, it's fairly flat across the top and then it drops away a lot on the sides. Look at that, drops away. What it means is these rails are going to be quite knifey. They'll act as a fin in the wave face. Got a beautiful plywood stringer here and a subtle logo, I like that. This one has Futures boxes. We'll just check the rocker. I like to hold the check tail. It doesn't have a huge amount of tail rocker there. The gap there is not massive. And we'll check the nose. Right, it does have a nice little flip in the nose for entry. And then down here, it's actually fairly flat. The whole board actually has got a nice sort of a nice rocker to it. We look down the board, see that flip in the nose, and then it's running straight through that double concave. It's a low volume 7.6. This doesn't have any more volume than my 7.2 or 7.0. Next, the fun bits. We get to put a loop in the tail. I remember when I first got my board, I had no idea how to set it up. So we need that. Of course, we're going to need some wax. I'll put a base coat. I wouldn't wax this to the nose because there's no way I'm putting a foot up here. What I can see is a nice volan patch here. You can see that it's a bit darker here. It's got an extra layer of glass here. Same on the tail. It's got an extra patch here. You can see where it's a bit darker there than here. There's extra glass. So it's actually glassed 6.4 with 6.6 on the tail and on the top deck. What does that mean? It means it's pretty light, but it's reasonably strong. So it's not a heavy glass job, but it's not ultralight. We're going to go to about here. These rails remind me of an album or an 80s style board. They're very similar to a couple of others that I have. Once you get used to pushing up a little bit more inboard, you'll be fine. I like to put a little bit up here. It's where my left hand will go and my right hand when I'm paddling. I'll paddle and I'll just grab a hand if I'm going to push the nose through a wave. This will be very easy to duck dive. Okay, that's the base coat. Top coat, softer wax. Where I am, it's quite warm water, 21, 22 degrees. So you've got to pick the wax for the water. There we go. That's pretty sticky. A little bit softer again. Just for the final coat. Now let's talk fins. That's looking good. For this board, because it's refined, we're going to try some NVS. Make sure these are out. These ones are called this is a JLL trailer 80/20 Futures NVS Apex series. Of course, these will go on the back. The back ones usually don't need as much screwing in as the front for some reason. It doesn't look like it's quite in. I'm just going to do that again. Sometimes when the board is new, a bit of mess gets in there. We'll do our little trick. A little bit of wax on the fin. There we go. Get it right in there. That feels good. And now front. This is a Peregrine L side large NVS Apex series. What's so good about them? They're made out of G10 fiberglass. So they're super high quality, precision cut, and they're quite finely foiled. Just rubbing a bit of wax on here to make them go in easier. I know it doesn't make sense, but it works. That's amazing. Beautiful. And a little nip in. That one's just gone in for miles. These back ones feels a bit odd. I'm guessing they make a deep recess on this particular fin. Pretty happy with that. I know. Check that out. This is a refined board with a refined fin. So a little leg rope. 7-foot leg rope. Just about right. Pop this fella on the rack in its spot. Welcome to the quiver. You can see that it's actually quite a lot more refined than the 7.4 beside it all the way. I'm excited to try this board out. All right, so I've just got back from surfing this 7.6 Scotty James Surfboards custom quad. Look at it. What a weapon. What can I tell you? It's good. It's really good. So first we'll talk about where I surfed. I surfed in I'd say knee to chest high, clean point breaks. As soon as I got in the water with this, there was a few things I noticed. Firstly, pretty thin. So as per what I predicted, it does not have a lot of volume. I was sitting there floating up to my elbows, which means this board is somewhere around 43.5 litres is my best guess, which for a 7.6 is a very low volume 7.6. But what I did notice is the long water line, that being 7.6 long, it paddled well. It's got this little lift in the nose. Can you see that nose there? It just lifts like that. So this little lift, so you're paddling it, the nose is out of the water, but the rest of the board is pretty straight. So I sat on it, I noticed it sinks a bit. I paddled, it paddles pretty well. I was able to get into every single wave that I paddled for today, which is great. Some of them were a little small, some of them were big. As soon as I got the biggest set, it just loved it. It's like, please let me have some of this size wave. It wanted to race down that wave. Also, I noticed with the rails being quite tapered off, it bit into the wave face and I could get back up the wave face very easily. Just have a look how foiled that rail is there. Pretty skinny. So also I was riding it initially in the middle of the board, and then I tried a few things. I tried getting down the back of the board to see if I can get some turns, but I really feel like it needs a little more push in the wave for that. And this, I believe, is a step up for me. So being smallish waves, what was happening was it wanted me to be a bit further forward. Now I said earlier that I'm not waxing it to the nose and I don't think I'm going to be putting a foot down there. Well, guess what? It actually loves it. I was able to get a foot right down near the nose. At the end of these waves I was surfing were fairly flat. They flatten up a bit and they get fat. And I went down the front of the board and it just kept going down. And now I think that's happening because of that double concave in the board, which starts so early. I mean, it really starts up the very top of the board. So it's got that lift, it's lifting the board, and it did not nosedive, much to my surprise. Also, let's chat for a minute about these fins. These NVS are great. It's just a beautiful, well-foiled G10 Apex series. Peregrine L on the front, and it's a something L trailer on the back. I'm 91 kilograms and these plenty of grip. There was never a question of the back sliding out. All the drive I needed, it felt like it turned. I think they're the perfect fins for this board. So also let's talk about wear and tear. It's just one surf in. I haven't noticed a whole lot of indentation or anything, which occasionally when I get a new board, if it's very lightly glassed, it will start showing marks in the first surf. I mean, it's definitely not the thickest glass job I've ever had, but you can tell this board is tuned. It's nimble. It is like a Ferrari. Refined, high performance. It wants better waves. I'm gonna have to surf this in better waves, but I was actually really impressed. I would happily put this under my arm. It was also nice and light to carry in. Normally I would take a bigger mid-length, like a 7.6, 7.8, 7.10, and it's usually chunkier. They're usually thicker and wider. This is not as wide, it's not as thick, and it's very sporty. This is a sporty board. I'm really happy with it, and it was great value from SJS Custom. They're on the Gold Coast. If you see one pop up you like, I would say give it a shot. I've got another one of his boards I'm going to give a crack soon, but this one so far, very impressive. I was actually really happy with this board. Sometimes when you see a board pop up and it's in stock and it's a little bit cheaper, it's worth taking the risk. On this one, it was really worth it.